Moving on then in Lewis Carroll to the seventh series. In this case, the discussion is focused now upon esoteric words. And he says in this chapter that Carroll has a type of method that he's developed for connecting series, different heterogeneous series. And in the first type of series, he says that in the first series we have the idea of two series of events with very slight internal differences between them that are connected by means of a strange object. And he gives the example of the cyclist who has two successive accidents. So the two series in this case are not simultaneous but successive. And he has two accidents that are connected by means of the strange object of a clock with 8 hands that does not keep time or tell time, but actually time follows it. And sometimes it messes up the temporal sequence. But in any event, we have the two successive series of the two accidents that the cyclist has being connected by means of this strange object as the first way for connecting series in Carroll. In the second example of the way in which series are connected, we have great differences. We have two series that have large differences between them, but the differences then are connected by means of a set of propositions or a sound or a word that is basically has an onomatopoeic value to it. So a word that's, like in James Joyce and Finnegan's Wake, where he uses the thunderbolt and he spells it out and sounds it out. So you have an onomatopoeic word that connects the two series. But it's really the third series that becomes interesting here, in which we have two heterogeneous series that have great disparity between them, but are connected by means of esoteric words. And he's going to make a distinction here between three different types of esoteric words. We'll have contractive words, and we'll have circulating words, and we'll have portmanteau words. And in the first two types of words will correspond to two different types of synthesis, a connective synthesis and a conjunctive synthesis, whereas the portmanteau words will correspond to a disjunctive synthesis. And these three syntheses might be familiar to readers of Anti-Oedipus because they'll turn up again in Anti-Oedipus, but not in the context here of esoteric words. So for the third series of connections, we have a specific type of esoteric word, which is contractive. So we have a contractive esoteric word, and he gives the example from Carroll of Your Royal Highness that is contracted to form what Carroll calls an unpronounceable monosyllable of urence. And I can't even pronounce that as a single syllable, but supposedly it's meant to be a one-syllable contraction of Your Royal Highness into urence. And so that's an esoteric word that is used in a type of synthesis which is called a connective type of synthesis, in which syllables are simply contracted together to form a single monosyllabic word. And that's the third series. But also within this series, we have another type of synthesis, namely the conjunctive synthesis. And with the conjunctive synthesis, we have two separate heterogeneous series that are brought together in a single word, such as the word snark, for example, which is a conjunction of a snake and a shark. Two heterogeneous series are therefore brought together, and we have a coexistive or a synthesis of coexistence of the two series. But it's in the fourth series, and the fourth series makes use of the third type of esoteric word, the portmanteau word. It becomes even more interesting because the fourth series is which we have series that are ramified infinitely as the result of the use of a portmanteau word. And a portmanteau word differs from these other types of esoteric words insofar as that a portmanteau word combines other words, at least two of them, but very often more, combines other words together to ramify meanings indefinitely. And any reader of Finnegan's Wake is already well acquainted with Joyce's use of portmanteau words. And he gives the example of the word jabberwocky. Jabber means to jabber, to talk incessantly, and wocky apparently comes from a root word wokor, meaning a type of fruit. So we have two different series that are brought together there, jabberwocky, or the word frumious. And these words are actually non-existent words, and that's the key thing about them. Frumious is a portmanteau word that combines furious and fuming together to form the word frumious. And there's a disjunction here in this case. It's a manifestation of a disjunctive synthesis because whether one, as Carroll specifies, if one inclines toward furious, then one is furious fumious, or furious fuming. If one inclines toward fuming, then one is fuming furious. But the perfectly balanced mind is right in between them, and so we have the portmanteau word frumious as a disjunctive synthesis of the two that are brought together in a single series, but that ramifies series, anytime a portmanteau word is used in a series, it ramifies that series in a way that's similar to the later idea of the rhizome. You will recall that the use of the rhizome in A Thousand Plateaus is that one of the basic principles of the rhizome is that it can connect, any assemblage can connect to any other assemblage at any point to form a rhizome, which can therefore ramify indefinitely. And James Joyce was, of course, the master of this. I think it might be good. In some ways, I wish that this book had been a meditation on Finnegan's Wake rather than Lewis Carroll. But of course, Finnegan's Wake is an overwhelming onslaught of portmanteau words. And if we look at the first paragraph of Finnegan's Wake here, which I want to glance at, we can see how Joyce uses these portmanteau words in precisely the way that Carroll says that the disjunctive synthesis keeps disjoining connections so that they ramify into indefinitely or infinitely multiple meanings that just keep ramifying and ramifying. The opening lines of Finnegan's Wake are a good example here, where he says, "River run, past Even Adams, from swerve of shore to bend of bay, brings us by a commodious vicus of recirculation back to Hoath Castle and environs." No portmanteau words there. There are words with double meanings, such as commodious vicus. Commodious means wide and spacious, but it also refers to the Emperor Commodus, in whose age the Roman Empire began to decline. Vicus is a path, a road, as in the word via. It's a road, but it also refers to Vico, the philosopher of the eternal return that Joyce is invoking here. But it's in the next paragraph that he begins to introduce actual portmanteau words that are very similar. And I think Joyce had Lewis Carroll in mind quite a bit in his use of language, where he says in the second paragraph, "Sir Tristram, Viola de Moray, from the short sea, had Pausancourt re-arrived from North Armorica on this side the scraggy isthmus of Europe Minor to wield or fight his Penisolate war." Sir Tristram, of course, is a historical figure, but it also refers to Tristan, in the case of Tristan and Isolde and their love relationship. Viola de Moray is a pun, not yet a portmanteau word, but a pun on the one who violates love, but it's also the one who plays the love song, and also the one who can play the viola. From over the short sea, had Pausancourt. Pausancourt means encore. It's coming back again, as indicated by the word re-arrive. So we're coming back into a new historical cycle. So Joyce is already conveying to us the sense that history, one cycle has come to its end in a Baconian ricorso that is now beginning. It's the idea of the eternal return. All history returns, as in Hindu cosmology, from which Joyce drew great inspiration, of the idea of the great Mahayugas that begin and re-begin over and over again. North Armorica is, of course, a pun on North America as well as Armorica in Brittany. On this side, the scraggy isthmus of Europe Minor, to wield or fight his Penisolate war. Now, Penisolate there is the first use of a portmanteau word in Finnegan's Wake, because Penisolate refers to multiple meanings. It's peninsular. It refers to the Peninsular War, the Great War of Napoleon, the Peninsular War, but it also refers to penis so late, which refers to the problems of love that are going to recur all throughout Finnegan's Wake, and broken love affairs that are going to become one of its major leitmotifs. But it also refers to the idea of pen in isolation. So we have the idea of the pen man. Shem and Shan will have Shem the pen man, the one who writes in isolation, keeps himself holed up in his cave and doesn't go out much, versus Shan the postman, who delivers the messages that Shem the pen man writes. These are the archetypal figures in history, the one who thinks and the one who does. The Kshatriya, the warrior caste, versus the Brahmin, the one who knows all the rules and rituals, and so forth. So anyway, this gives you an example from Finnegan's Wake of the use of a portmanteau word as disjunctive synthesis in exactly the sense in which Deleuze is talking about here. The paragraph continues, "Nor had top Sawyer's rocks by the stream Oconee exaggerated themselves to Lorenz County's gorgios while they went doubling their mumper all the time." So we're going back here. These events had not yet taken place. We're going back to a primordial, archaic, ancient epoch, back before biblical times, back even into the book of Genesis, where the age of Tom Sawyer, but also the top Sawyer is the one who, when lumberjacks saw there's a top Sawyer and a bottom Sawyer, by the stream Oconee, the tendency in America to rename cities after European cities, Lorenz County's gorgios, while they went doubling their mumper, just as America often doubles their cities. New Amsterdam, New York, tends to double the European cities. There are Dublins, cities named Dublin in America as well. Nor a voice from afar below said, Misha, Misha, to top through our Petrie. Not yet, though Venice soon after had a kid scad butt into the bland old Isaac. So that's, of course, Isaac, and venison refers to the goat. The skin that Isaac wore to trick his brother Esau, and Vanessa refers to Jonathan Swift's love affair with Vanessa, and so on, and it goes back through this archaic epoch. Not yet, though all's fair in Vanity, where Sazzy Sether's wrath with Twone Nathanjo. Those are, of course, the books of Ruth and Esther, with Twone Nathanjo. 2 and 1 is Twone, and so forth. And Joyce just has this wonderful play with language in Finnegan's Wake, where the meanings can ramify in disjunctive syntheses that ramify in a rhizomatic fashion that make connections upon connections upon connections that keep pulling in series of meanings and ramifying them indefinitely in exactly the way that Lewis Carroll does, but in a much more specific and strategic way. So that's the chapter then on esoteric word use.